Hi there, I hope you're well. So welcome to the UK House Price Index for Scotland for October. So just a few weeks ago I did September, gave you a good insight to what the property market was doing in Scotland, focused in on Fife properties, Dundee properties, Edinburgh properties and Glasgow properties, and gave you a feel for what things look like in your area. So make some interesting reading for October, it has to be said. So we worked to October because it takes a few months to catch up in real time. But some real highlighters here. So if we look at the headline statistics, and I'm just going to show you that just now. So you can see here that the average price of a property in Scotland overall was £197,000. Now that's a slight decrease on September's number, 198,000. Nothing really major there, but still a really affordable place to live, isn't it? The annual price change of property in Scotland was 5.7% in September. This month, as you can see, it's 5.5%. So a very slight decrease. You'd expect that if the average property value has come down. But the monthly price change for October in Scotland was 0.2%, which is actually an improvement on the previous months. So that's positive to see. But the index figure for Scotland from January 15 to now is 146.3. So that gives us good insight to growth overall in that period. Be interesting to see how that develops going forward. So some announcements that have been made just yesterday, in fact, in regards to interest rates. When I spoke to you about September's update, we discussed the fact that we didn't really know what was going to happen with interest rates. We knew it was going to be reviewed again in December, but it primarily is impacted by the cost of living inflation. So interest rates have held at 4.75%. So I guess that's a strong position in regards that it didn't increase. But I think there was hope out there that actually it might be a reduction. But again, it depended on what happened with UK inflation rates. And this is what really hit home in the UK inflation rates. The UK inflation rates have gone up for the second month in a row. Last month, it was 2.3%. This month, it's 2.6%. That's inflation that's hit 2.6 in the year to November, according to official figures by the Office of National Statistics. And the way that they break that down is they look at categories that impact inflation. Main one being fuel and clothing, actually, among the main drivers behind this rise. Increasing ticket prices for gigs as well. So if you were going to concerts, etc., they were increasing. So again, that's hit inflation. So all those three things have played a big factor in it. But analysts are saying that the latest figures mean that the Bank of England will almost certainly not cut interest rates. They've announced that they didn't. If it stays at that level, we don't foresee that they will be changing in any time in the near future. So fantastic if you're on fixed rates. If you're on variables, it might be something you want to consider looking into. See if there's maybe an opportunity for you to get a better option out there. It rose again. It was a concern. As I said, it is fuel, clothing, fuel being airfares. Traditionally, they dip at this time of year as well. So maybe we might see a bit of a difference there in regards to how it impacts things going forward. It fell a year ago. Economists think it's going to go up again. So actually sitting at 2.6 just now, looks like it might increase. So can't see anything really hitting the interest rates as far as that's concerned, because it does tie in with that. The positive though, which I think is a good thing, is that pay growth increased for the first time in 12 months. So pay growth, basically what you're taking home in your salary. Okay, you may be paying extras out, but the fact that pay growth has actually increased is a big thing. So regular pay grew at a faster than expected annual pace of 5.2% between August and October. Again, this is according to the Office of National Statistics. And they said that wages continue to grow faster than prices. So that may actually put some people in a good position of strength as well in regards to potentially moving. Analysts say that the latest figures mean that Bank of England won't cut it. We've shown that they haven't, and actually it doesn't look like they will increase or cut in the very near future. Unemployment rates as well was unchanged at 4.3%. So good employment market with good strong pay increases there as well. So again, that does stabilise things slightly. So we are looking ideally for inflation to start stabilising a little bit. What they generally look at, the Bank of England, when they're looking to potentially change their interest rates, is that inflation being at 2%. That's the ideal point for them to decide whether they're cutting. So it went from 2 to 2.3 to 2.6. So really can't foresee that that's going to be changing in the next few months. Certainly one to keep an eye out on. But that's some of the kind of headline stats in regards to what's impacting those properties and potentially will impact going forward. And it gives you your headline stats there as well. What we're going to look at as well is the economic statement. So according to the economic statement, total transaction volumes and new builds have increased recently, which is good. The HM Land Registry said that 40% of HM revenue customers' provisional sales estimate for UK that the home improvements first estimate in recent months, transaction volumes over older periods, new build volumes definitely remain lower than historically averages. Users should be aware that revisions may be larger than historically shown previously in regards to what that may look like in regards to a dip for new build properties. Again, we talked about that last month, didn't we, in regards to new builds. They are much more expensive. We'll talk about that when we go into the statistics later, but it does mean that they take longer to sell. And there is an influx of new property because we're needing new properties built. There's a shortage of homes, we all know that. But average house prices in Scotland, as I said earlier on, they've increased by 5.5% in the 12 months from October 23 to 24, the average price being 197,000. That's the provisional estimate. It looks like that will be finalised once the land registry numbers are known, but it gives us a good insight to what it's likely to be. This was up from 5.1% over the 12 months to September. So we covered that earlier as well. So good to see that our average house price is still increasing for us. Makes the market a strong position as well. And it shows that those transactions are coming through. And we'll talk about that as we go through this. These numbers are on a non-seasonally adjusted basis as well. What does that mean? Basically, what that means is that there is still seasonality. So you will have peaks in spring, for instance, you'll have peaks in summer, you'll have peaks as we go into autumn in regards to volumes of sales. So what they do to get an average across the board is they basically take all of that and they split it over the 12 months and give us an average of what they feel that potentially it's sitting at just now. So that gives us good insight to that, and that's where that seasonally adjusted is. So it gives it a more even keel, if you like. In Scotland, particular types of properties that are selling. So detached houses had the highest annual percentage change out of property types, increasing by 5.9% in the 12 months to October. The average detached property is £346,000. So when you look at the average property across Scotland being 197 and your average detached is 346, you can see how that's really slaying that number a little bit. Semi-detached houses had the lowest annual percentage change, which increased by 5.1% in the 12 months to October, with the average semi-detached property coming in at 209,000. But again, still really affordable, isn't it? In Scotland, 30 of the 32 local authority areas showed an increase in average house prices in the 12 months. The highest annual percentage change was in West Lothian, so great for those Edinburgh properties, where the average price increased by 9.7%. Now that was sitting at 7.9 last month, so again, that's increasing. So really healthy market there if you're looking to sell or buy in Edinburgh areas. In the 12 months to October 24, 220,000 was the average for that. So important to see that. The lowest annual percentage change was in Dumfries and Galloway, where average house prices decreased by 0.7%. In the 12 months. The average house price in those particular locations is 165,000. But again, if you look at that, still very affordable, isn't it? Dumfries and Galloway as well, there won't be the numbers in regards to the transaction as well. If you're in Edinburgh, East Lothian, you're in the city centre, you're expecting to see much higher increase in property sales because the units are just more available there, aren't they? Whereas you go into the more remote land areas, they're going to have less. So it's weighing it on a different spectrum, if you like, in regards to the multiples. But still great prices if you're looking to live in that area or move in that area. As with other indicators in the housing market, typical fluctuations month on month are always there, but good to see how it's going to pan out. 1 month doesn't make a trend, of course. We're looking at a 12-month period. It'll be interesting to see how that's going to impact things moving forward. So we're going to look at price changes over the 12 months. So let's look at the annual price change. Let me just get that slide for you. It won't be 1 second. There we go. So we're there looking at that. So you're looking at your annual price changes here. So I've made this larger for you just so you can get a better view of it. Annual price changes. If you look at October 20, which is here, that's sitting at about 6%. You see that fluctuate. It goes up there till about 14%. So that was in the peak when we were at COVID stages. So you would expect to see that then. What it then does, we have the Liz Truss budget, which obviously had a massive impact, and you saw prices coming down. But then through October 23 into April 24 into October 24, you can see that increasing to those 5.7s that we spoke about earlier on. So great to see that that is increasing. And in Scotland, average prices, as I said earlier, increased by 5.5%. So a really strong position for that to be in as well. Let me just get rid of that slide for you. Perfect. So it's still good to see increases happening. It's important for that to happen. It helps the economy as a whole. We have everyone that's moving is going to be spending on average £10,000. So if we look at the amount of properties, if there's 10,000 properties sell, you're then looking at 10 million. So if that dips, it's all that economy that gets impacted. It's your supply chain, it's your plumbers, it's your joiners, it's your removals firms, it's your estate agents, it's your solicitors, it's your local shops, it's everything is impacted locally in regards to that if properties don't sell. So it's great to see that we're still seeing an increase there. We're still seeing the transactions improve. And that, again, will keep the economy going, which actually then goes back to the inflation price that we talked about, the wage growth. All of those things are impacted by that. The more money that's in our economy, the better it will be across the page. So it's just about watching that and seeing how that's going to develop. So we're now going to look at actually, what does that price look like in each location? Let me just get that slide for you. Give me 1 wee second. So if we look at this one, what you're basically seeing here is, so you've got your Argyll and Bute, October 24, 191,000 versus 190. Not a massive change there. But if we look at the places that really impact us, so let's look at Dundee, for instance, for your Dundee properties. So that's increased in October, 148,230 versus 147,950 October the previous year. So an increase of 0.2%. So steady in Dundee. Actually, that's not really changed. That was the same last month, and it looks like that flow is continuing to go through. If we look at Edinburgh, which again is an area that we're activated in, Edinburgh, you've got 339,000. That's a lot for an average property. It's gone up by 320,000 from the previous 12 months, an increase of 6.1%. So really strong position for that to be in, 339,648 versus the 321,680. So good positions. If we look at Glasgow, 187 versus 176, so 6.2 growth there as well. So the city centres definitely seem to be doing well. Even Aberdeen has gone up. Go back up to Aberdeen, they were 140 versus 132, so an increase of 6.2. That's really good for Aberdeen because everything has slowed in that city as well. So good to see that that growth of the 12 months seems to be coming back. Strong position for them. Interestingly, what we want to look at as well, so you've got Dumfries and Galloway, we spoke about that earlier on in regards to 164. That's actually decreased very slightly. You've got East Ayrshire 133 versus 124, 7.3%. So again, good improvements there as well. Dumbartonshire 275 versus 272, so 1% increase there. East Lothian 314 versus 299,000. That's a 5% increase. East Renfrewshire 305 versus 288, so 5.9% increase. We jump then to Fife, 180,063 is the average house price in Fife versus 176,148 12 months ago. So that's an increase of 2.2%. So still growth there as well. And we have actually seen that month on month, actually. It's steadily going at 2% each month. So good to see that's not being impacted in a negative way. Midlothian, 248,000 versus 228,000, an increase of 8.7. Talked about that earlier as being one of the highlights. So some real strong performances there. Good to see that property is improving in those areas. What we're then going to look at is the average prices across the board in regards to maps. Some people like numbers, some people like colours, visuals. It depends really on what works for you, doesn't it? So if we look at the maps here, you can see where those numbers are hitting. So your 230,000 and above down to your lower numbers. So if you look at the islands, you're always going to see that because it's low numbers, isn't it? They probably sell 1 or 2 properties a month versus if you go into the Edinburghs and the city centres where obviously those numbers, the multiples are higher. But again, really strong view of the property market there. And you can see in the Fife area as well, looking pretty strong there. Let's look at property types. So the types of properties, what do they look like? Interesting one. If we look at, say, for instance, your detached property at the moment, as we said earlier on, the average price in October this year is 346,446 versus 327,000. That's a 5.9% difference. Your semi-detached, 209,000 versus 198, so that's 5.1% improvement. Your terraced, 167,000 for a terrace property. You get beautiful terrace properties in the locations of Fife and Edinburgh and Dundee. They're sitting at 167,000 versus 158, so again an increase of 5.7. But even your flats and masonettes, they're up 137,000 versus 130, so again an increase of 5.4. So overall, gives us that average at 197, 5.5% increase. So really great that we're seeing that in all of the areas. Good growth in every type of property, and actually in most locations as well. So the market is quite strong in property. You can certainly see all those inflated prices in Edinburgh. Maybe everybody's moving to Fife, I don't know. Let's see how that pans out. Transactions is what it all bases itself on, though. Sales transactions are everything. So it's not necessarily, it's great that the property values are increasing, but it's actually what the strength of the market is shown in the transactions. And what do I mean by that? Basically, the transactions are keys in hand, money has exchanged, property is under new ownership. If those numbers are strong, those are the things that keep the economy in the property sector strong, because of all that supply chain that I spoke about earlier on, and everybody keeps in business because of the fact that they are dealing with all of these exchanges that are taking place in property. So if we look at that as well, that makes a big difference. Let me just get that slide and I can show you what that looks like for yourselves. And 1 wee second, just having some technical issues here. Perfect. So if we look at that, what you can see here is basically you've got Aberdeenshire at the top. So these are from August, because the transactions work 3 months, 2 to 3 months technically behind with land registry, because these are real-time figures from the land registry that we're looking at. So if we look at Aberdeenshire, for instance, they're 384 transactions versus 350. So they have increased, which is what you want to see. Angus is sitting at 185 versus 167, which is great. You've got Argyll and Bute at 232 versus 151. So again, from August 24 back to August 23. City of Aberdeen, we saw that price increase with there, and you can see here 458 versus 375. So that is showing you where that growth is coming from in the transactional numbers. City of Dundee as well, 254 versus 190. So again, whilst their growth in regards to the value was only 0.2%, the transactions are up. So that's really strong for that market. So it's really good to see that. City of Edinburgh, pretty stable. You've got 1100 versus 902. Again, strong position there. And we've talked about that in regards to values. So the values and the transactions are strong in those areas, which is great. If you look at the City of Glasgow, you're at 1131 versus 948. So again, very strong, actually stronger than the performance of Edinburgh, but both cities really performing well. You've then got Dumfries and Galloway. That's the only one that's slightly gone down. But again, as I said earlier, the geographics, the number of properties there, you will see possibly a slight decline. But you've also seen the decline in the transactions, but also in value as well, very slightly. But I don't think that's anything to be overly concerned about. We then go on and we look at Fife, for instance. So if we look at Fife, 649 transactions versus 545. So again, strong transactions in Fife. That's great for our local economy. It's great for all of those supply chains that help and work in those locations as well. So it makes a big difference in regards to the money that's going into our economies, and that's a really stable market for us. So the values of property are going up, wage growth is going up, interest rates have stayed the same, transactions are improving. So actually quite a strong market for us. Let's see how that comes over the next few months when we go into the real winter periods, which we sometimes can see does have an impact. So not looking too bad, is it? So sales volumes as well, we've covered that. If you want more information on that and how that impacts you in your location, certainly just reach out. Feel free to message me here directly. Likewise, you can reach out to the team afterwards if you don't want to put your questions on the post. Property status. So let's have a look at what actually is then selling. in regards to the types of property. We spoke about that briefly. And let me just get that slide for you, and we'll have a wee look at what that looks like for you. So property status and sales volumes, you can see the sales volumes there as well. It gives us a good idea into those transactions, how that's improving. So we saw in August 20, transactions over Scotland were 6,977 in August of 20. That went up to just under the 10,000 in 21, 9,500 in 22. Obviously, then we were post-COVID, things kind of stabilised a little bit. It went to 8,400 and then has increased really back to the August 21 numbers, which was really the COVID impact numbers, which was where we saw the boom coming. So actually quite nice to see it normalised, but actually nearly 25% higher than pre-COVID. So that puts us in a strong position. So it looks really healthy when you look at it like that. Property statuses we're looking at now. We talked about new builds earlier on and the average prices for those. So you can see there that the monthly change in new builds is 6.3%. The average price for a new build property is 337,658, which is an annual increase of 30% versus existing resolds, which is properties that have been pre-owned and exchanging hands, increase overall at 0.6%. Quite interesting, that one on the new builds, isn't it? Because that is an absolutely tremendous difference of nearly 140,000 between your pre-solds and your new builds, and it's purely and simply because of the ergonomics of a new build property just now, and also the ratings in regards to your EPCs, so your energy, your build, your renewables parts to it, and those are all really being challenged with new builders companies, because it's just so expensive to build a new build property. But actually there are a lot of them out there and they are selling. We've got new builds in Glenrothes, Kirkcaldy, we've got some along in the East Neuk, we've got Dunfermline as well. So we can see a lot of activity in regards to new build property. So they are being produced, they are selling. People are paying them at a premium, but people are paying that premium for a more eco-friendly house. So it makes a big difference, but it is challenging the builders to supply new build properties at an economic scale. So it'll be interesting to see if that kind of figure changes as we go through into 2025, which we're nearly very fast approaching, actually, aren't we? Buyer status is always an interesting one as well. So let's have a look at the buyer status and what does that look like in regards to who's buying and what are they buying. Let me just get that slide for you. I always find this one a really interesting one because it gives us a good view as to who's coming and through your property. So your buyer status, your first-time buyers, £158,935 is your average price that your first-time buyer is paying. That's a monthly change at 0.3, but an annual change of 5.7. Your former owner occupiers, so someone who's bought before, they're maybe downsizing, upsizing, depends what their life story is. Their average price is 237,429, which is 0.1 monthly change, but a 5.3 change. So again, quite a healthy position to be in. But what then I find quite interesting out of this, and it tends to run in with the first-time buyers, is actually how are they funding things? So if we look at the funding, your cash buyer is average price for October was 180,126, which was a monthly improvement of 0.3% and an annual change of 4.8. Those buying on a mortgage, the average price that they're paying is 205,804, which is a 0.2% improvement, but overall annually a 6% improvement. That 180 cash buyer one is a really interesting one, because if you've got property that's on the market at the moment and for whatever personal reason you've decided that you want a cash buyer and your property is valued at say 300,000, you may just want to reconsider your position on that, because you can see there that the average person is spending £180,000 cash on a property, whereas your mortgage buyer is spending more. So something to think about in regards to possibly if your property's been on the market for a long time and it's been primarily because you've chosen that you want a cash buyer, maybe have a word with your estate agent, talk about maybe a new tact, a new avenue you perhaps want to take. Just something interesting for you to think about there. So lots of change there, lots of economic changes as well. I think the fact that interest rates have remained the same at 4.75 has been a bit of a surprise. There was a thought that it may come down, but if inflation has continued to increase month on month, and it's way beyond now that 2% at 2.6, 2.3 last month and then 2%, we need to really see that stabilise a little bit in regards to how the government, the Bank of England, look at the numbers and how they make that work for us as regards to consumers and spenders. If you do have any questions on the back of this, then feel free to reach out. Perrie at Properties TV if you need anything Speak to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.